Good morning. This is the Government Operations and Fiscal Policy Committee. We have 3 items today. We have an Executive Regulation 15-21 Racial Equity and Social Justice Action Plan. We also are going to discuss the county income tax estimates. This is a particular discussion that we had to reschedule. We wanted to do this during the budget, but we decided to come back. And number 3, a resolution to approve the tax-supported fiscal plan summary for the FY 23 to 28 Public Services Program. And this is something that, of course, we do every year. And so we're going to start with our first item, and I want to welcome Ms. Tiffany Ward, who's our Racial Equity and Social Justice, the director of that office, and she has been doing an incredible job given all that is required and that. And then we also have Ms. Selena Singleton, who is the council's Racial Equity and Social Justice specialist here. And what we are going to look at today is, as I said earlier, is the executive regulation, which obviously is what is required in order to implement the law that was passed in the was late 2019, I believe it was November, and ever since there has just been incredible work. I had the opportunity to make a presentation to the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments last week on equity emphasis areas, and it was really awesome to be able to connect the dots with this particular act, and then how equity emphasis areas can also be utilized, especially for jurisdictions who may not have a law yet. It could be an entree into starting to utilize a tool to promote equity. In our case, we obviously have been much more proactive in doing something that is so much more broad, but really important, because every year I think that there will be an opportunity to evaluate how things have been progressing in terms of reducing or eliminating particular gaps, which is the ultimate goal. I also want to, again, reiterate that the New York State General Assembly also passed a law for the state of New York based on this particular law that we adopted here. Should be signed by now. Which is also very exciting, because it means that states are beginning to really truly adopt and think in these terms. The one thing I said at the Council of Governments when I was asked, how do you know that this is working, et cetera, and I thought, well, it hasn't been that long. But I will say that pre-2019, I know that, I would hear people talk about equity, but only in spaces where there were folks that have been working on this for a long time who were interested in this. For me, this whole concept started to make a lot of sense and become an area of interest, most certainly when I was at the Board of Education, when I was serving there. But it was never something that was structural. And I have to say that, post 2019, I have been so excited and thrilled that equity seems to be a term now that everybody says pretty much whenever we have presentations. Folks are paying attention to that. And to me, that's the first step, because culture change, is not an easy thing. And you have to at least begin to consciously focus on, what this concept means. During the pandemic, I think that we were all it was like pushed into a space where we had to consider this notion of racial equity and social justice, and it saved lives. And so we are very fortunate here in the county that all this work has been taking place since 2019. And again, I want to thank you, Ms. Ward, and everyone really, especially my colleagues on this dais and the county executive, for really embracing this and understanding that it is not a panacea, it is not an overnight sensation. It's going to be a long-term effort. So with that, unless my colleagues have any questions, I'd like to first have Ms. Singleton give us any particular overview to set the tone, and then Ms. Ward will get right into the conversation about regarding the regulation.
Well,
The microphone's not working. Uh-oh.
green means. Yeah, green means something.
Yeah.
Red means on.
That's not good.
Just to confuse everybody, right?
Yeah. Hold on.
Uh,
Mr. Smith to the rescue. That's what we, maybe. But there,
Did it work? No, it's still green.
As the chair said, these conversations aren't easy.
Yeah.
I know, I didn't
You didn't
mean
need
to
exactly that.
scare
Our
the
airs
microphones.
are working up here.
Yeah.
Here's someone coming.
Here's someone. I remember the days when you couldn't have more than, what, 2 microphones on at the time, whatever, but I thought that we were past
But
that.
that, you say that that's good in comparison to what we have now. You know, you didn't touch that button that
Okay, here we go. I remember the days when we didn't need these and I can just talk loudly. It's true, it's true. So good morning, Chair Navarro, Council Members Reedson and Katz. We are here, as you indicated, to talk about Executive Regulation 1521, the Racial Equity and Social Justice regulation. It was received by the County Council on March 24th, and the regulation, as you know, implements Bill 2719 and 4420. There are 2 things that I did want to point out. There is in your packet at Circle 28 the fiscal impact and budget impact, which talks a little bit about the OMB estimates, and they indicate that it is difficult right now to offer any estimates because the departments are still in the process of developing action plans, and OMB suggests that it's too early to perform comprehensive estimate on expenditure changes. However, OMB indicated that the required annual training and workshops will have a fiscal impact of $1.8 million for certain employees who can only take training after working hours, so police, the sheriff's office, corrections, and fire and rescue, for example. And in addition, the Office of Racial Equity and Social Justice will provide training at a cost of $142,000 and a salary of an additional program manager that will cost $124,000 to assist with the implementation of the regulations. The total for training and assisting with the regulations over 6 years is estimated to be $12.8 million. The other thing that I wanted to point out is that the county executive did receive 1 comment during the proposed regulation, from CASA. And CASA indicated on November 1st, and that's Circle 26 and 27, that they supported the regulation and respectfully urges favorable report. And so the council recommendation, or the council staff recommendation, is to approve as it has been transmitted.
Thank you so much, Ms. Singleton. Ms. Ward.
Or you could use
There we
this.
go. There we go. There we go. We just had to let it warm up. Good morning. Good morning. Tiffany Ward, for the record, Director of the Office of Racial Equity and Social Justice. Firstly, I just want to thank you all for having me here today, and thank you for your patience with these regulations. We actually put a lot of thought and a lot of work into these regulations and believe that they lay out in detail how we plan to implement the legislation that sets our charge. We actually go into detail about the amount of training that each employee should go through. We talk about the template that we are creating for the racial equity action plans for our departments. We also go into detail about how we expect departments to center communities of color. and ask for support to do that in our next budget, as well as ask for support to do communications about our work. Like Nancy said, our charge is both broad and deep, and while we have been I will say in the hole, making sure that this work gets done, sometimes we need help telling people our story about how this is working in Montgomery County. I welcome any discussion and edits of these regulations, but know that we have thoughtfully done this, and really, again, thank you for having us in front of you today.
Thank you. So I guess one item, and I'm just going to, I guess it's something that I've been wondering about too. I said earlier that, culture change is very difficult to achieve, and once one embarks in this journey, then I think there needs to be sort of a recognition by all employees in all levels of government that there has to, that everybody has a responsibility also, I think, to outside of this training, to, to think through why we're doing this, correct? Oftentimes, I think that there is this sort of perception that, this is just some, left-wing liberal thing, right? But then when you look at things from a almost mathematical perspective, especially for a county like ours, where the vast majority of the population, are folks of color, with a very large immigrant population, a school system that is, 72% children of color, Montgomery College, I think is 78%, et cetera. The reality is that we have to center our work in this space in order to do our jobs appropriately, in order to truly serve our residents, in order to be fiscally responsible. Because if we don't know what works to address these disparities, they're only going to get worse. And then we're just throwing money out there trying to address it without any particular structural and strategic, guidance. And so I think that already there has been, there has been more of a desire, especially with employees, to ask questions, but also to, challenge, especially folks who are in management or in directorships. And I hope that the training will center around that too, because especially when you have employees of color who might bring up issues that are happening in the community and observe, right, perhaps areas where there's definitely some type of lack of prioritizing, issues affecting mostly communities of color. And we know where communities of color are because we all seen the map. Redistricting Commission had the map. Market planning has the map. We all know. But then you get folks in managerial positions and director positions that seem to get upset that, for example, there is a recognition that these are communities are predominantly of color who may not know how to participate civically in a very active way, who don't come to testify, who don't have a voice, right? Something that I'm very familiar with because this is basically what I've done 24/7 since I, joined the Board of Education. How do you plan in terms of this training to address that in a way that is, not just educational but respectful, and also making sure that folks understand that there is a responsibility that everybody carries? How in the training will you be incorporating some of those issues?
I'll talk to you a little bit about how we are thinking about our training for managers and for directors. So all of our employees have an opportunity to take our Advancing Racial Equity in Government training that is delivered by myself and and our policy manager and training manager. And of course, we also have a 4-hour training that REI Institute gives on groundwater, right, which really talks about the systemic nature of racism and its outcomes, right? For our directors and managerial staff, we have this year and last year actually been focusing on getting the more intensive training, the 2-day training for the REI class that I think all of our electeds have taken. They've also taken, or we've tried to to offer them to everybody. I can't say that all of our managers or all of our directors have taken that training. And we also have worked to actually put together training on the use of data, the narrative storytelling, and why it's so important to disaggregate. So, right, trying to get them to buy into, right, one, that the problems that we have here are not fish problems. And by that I mean they're not problems that we have with residents, right? And even if we did, right, the issues that we are looking at are our systems, the things we have control over. We are here to interrogate those systems and how they are working or not working for communities of color in Montgomery County. And then we want to count. We're saying it matters. It matters. We know that we have a racial hierarchy across almost all issue areas in this county and the country that has white residents who are faring far better than our black and brown residents, right? And we're saying that that's because of systems, not because of people. And if we don't talk about it, we'll never know, right, how these folks are experiencing our services. We can't say all unless we know it's all. And so we are trying to drive home that work. We do have a good amount of work to do still on that. I think part of that has been some turnover, right? So the timing of when folks have been able to get that training has been, I won't say disjointed, but we have another set of trainings that are coming up that'll get some of our newer hires into those trainings and into exactly what the county is committed to and how we're committed to looking at systems and institutions, and not just at individuals, right, at people. So we are still working on that and still even thinking about how to get qualitative data, quite frankly, and how we are capturing it, one, getting community voice, and then how we are, how we're using it, how we're telling the narrative, and how to make it equal to how we're using quantitative data. So that's kind of our next step on the training side as we work with some think tanks in DC about how they're doing that work. Lots of folks have created now racial equity institutes within data places and think tanks, and so we're conferring with those folks and trying to get their help and bringing their expertise in-house.
Thank you for that response. I really appreciate your focus on the institution. Quite frankly, I don't think this is a matter of like which resident is receiving what. It's about the responsibility of those who are in charge of who make up the institution, understanding, what are those issues, and also, like as I said earlier, understanding that it's not just about some like moral or cool thing to do, a trendy thing to do, but it's also about our bottom line. Absolutely. It's also about how do we use taxpayers' money. Because if we didn't learn that lesson during the pandemic, that if we are not strategic and targeted and go after equity, the entire county suffers. If we didn't learn that, then we're in trouble. So I think that is going to be very, very important. And I think it's great that some of these issues are surfacing as there are these opportunities for folks to talk about this, because up until now, I think they've just been kept under lock and key because nobody really feels empowered to speak up, right? So that, I think, it's a good thing. But then we have to be prepared to address it once it does happen. And I think the training is gonna be very important. Ms. Singleton, anything that you would like to add to that particular issue? Because we on the county council are also going in, we are also involved in a process to make sure that our climate here, that our racial equity and social justice impact notes really are applicable, if you will. But of course, we also have to be honest and be able to look at ourselves and say, hey, we have some work to do here as well. And Ms. Singleton, I know that you're new at this, but how do you think that work is going, and how do you see these regulations helping you in that particular role?
So the regulations are helping in terms of looking at details about how we can put these issues together, and how we can look at community engagement, for example, and the kinds of metrics that we want and need to use. In addition, one of the things that you just mentioned is that we're going through this process here ourselves. And one of the things that we're doing is not only looking at the entire staff sort of all staff meetings, but also separating out supervisors and chiefs to talk specifically about managerial issues and what does that mean? What do our communities look like and who are we serving? And so we're looking at those from two different perspectives. We're also looking at a whole number of things in terms of, sort of our lunch and learns and inviting people and council members to talk to our staff again about those issues and how those specific issues relate to what it is that we're doing through systemic, through structural, through institutional racism issues that I'm not sure that that everybody understands, but it helps us to sort of inform and educate the council about that.
Thank you so much. And again, I know that you're new in this role, but I think that it's so important to have this position. That's why I wanted to make sure that it was included in the law, because it's a matter of making sure that especially those staff of color who, we've seen a real growth in that space on the county council in terms of, I know back in the day when I joined the council, it was not a lot of people of color on central staff or even on the floor of council members' floors. And I think that there's been really incredible progress, which is, it's important. However, that staff has to also feel supported. That staff also has to feel that they can come in here as their full selves and not have to somehow leave half of who they are at home in order to be successful in these roles. And so that is something that I think eventually even HR, right, we're going to have to start thinking through. How do we create those opportunities for growth, but also to feel empowered to be able to articulate what is happening in the communities? Because if we start from the space that these communities sometimes don't have voices because they don't have the tools, they haven't been given the tools to advocate for themselves. And then you have staff here who wants to help them have that voice and tools, and somehow they're not supported, well, then we haven't achieved much. So I think that this work will definitely progress, and that's why these regulations seem to be so on point to facilitate that.
Yeah, no, I think that's important. I think it's really, what's interesting is as we started our work on the racial equity space, we realized that the county really had not done the diversity and inclusion work first. And so we had a lot of conversations with employees about just that, right? We got a lot of people who were coming to us wanting to give complaints or wanting to file cases. And I think that it's really important that we acknowledge that we're starting kind of at a 3.0 setup, and we really do still have to do that foundational work. And so we've been in conversations both with HR and human rights about what's needed to do the diversity and inclusion work now that we have the charge of equity, which is really policy work. Like, you wrote the legislation, you understand what all that encompasses, but it also needs that ground level work on appropriate workplace culture, on how to have people feel safe in spaces, all of that kind of thing. And we're doing some of that really as a result of having started the racial equity work. As much as we are operationalizing this, doing our analysis on budget, doing our analysis on supplementals, we're still in a normalizing phase. We're still normalizing, we're still organizing, and we're still operationalizing all at the same time. And some folks still are not comfortable talking about race. And we have to acknowledge that, and we have to keep having those conversations, and not as if they are elementary or somehow we're over it or we're into the next step. We're never really over it. We're always in that space of learning, and that learning is something that I've been trying to say to people all over the county for the last 2 years, that just training, there is no such thing as just training. If you didn't know and it's informing your behavior both personally and professionally, then it's doing what it's supposed to do. So I think we can't underestimate all of the phases of this work.
Absolutely, but I am a firm believer that unless you force it, it doesn't happen, which is why I was adamant that this needed to be a law, and that was going to be then the catalyst for a lot of those things that even now you're beginning to identify that had not been done before because there wasn't any impetus for it, right? So it's great that, and as I said, this is going to be long-term. Councilmember Katz.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you not just for calling on me this morning, but for the reason that we're even having this discussion, quite candidly, is because of your thoughts and drive, and we all owe you such a a debt of gratitude. And thank Ms. Singleton, and I want to thank Ms. Ward as well. There's certainly people though you're in a new role, you were sitting up here with us in a different role, so we certainly know both of you, and that in itself is terrific to see both of you. Of all the work that I've ever done, and I've been involved for a couple weeks, this is perhaps the most eye-opening. And the training has been unbelievable. And there's days that you figure that you're going in for the training and you figure, I don't know, that's going to be a couple hours, and I'm not, whether that should be, is going to be the most fun we ever have. But it really, in many cases, not that it's all been fun, I don't want to give that impression, but in most cases, it has certainly been very thought-provoking, and as it needed to be. The Madam Chair mentioned that cultural change is difficult, and it is. And especially it's difficult if someone didn't even realize that they needed that cultural change. And because you have to get the awareness from the beginning, and you have to have an uncomfortable, at times, discussion to get to that awareness. But uncomfortable discussions, really, for the right reasons, are necessary. So that's where I am. I go back, and I probably mentioned this before, but I've been married for 44 years. It's hard to believe that Sally has put up with me for 44 years, and hopefully a couple of weeks beyond that. But when I first was married and got married to Sally, she and I were having a discussion. I know this is hard to believe for any husband and wife. We were having a discussion that was not going as well as either one of us would want it to go. And she looked at me and said, "You're talking to me with a mean face." I'm the youngest of three brothers. The expression mean face had never come up in my house, ever. And I said, what are you talking about? And she said, "You're looking at me with a mean face." And I wasn't aware that she was really upset over that. And it was just part of how I had discussions when it was that intense. And that lesson has stuck with me forever, because I understood that even though I didn't mean to make her feel that uncomfortable, I did. And it was something that we, in these discussions for the regulations and whatnot that we're going through, really need to make certain that everyone is aware. Even if you didn't mean to do it, you did it. And that becomes so very necessary. So I applaud it. I appreciate the packet and the information that's given this morning. And I sincerely thank all who were involved in this for doing the hard work. And I don't know that you should check with Sally. Every now and then I still might have a mean face, but I don't mean to. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Councilmember Feetson.
Well, first of all, I wasn't involved in that conversation, but I can say it was probably the mean face and the fact that you were wrong and she was right. So I'll just note that, knowing Sally and knowing you, I'm with Sally, just to be clear. But first of all, I want to just pick up where you left off in those remarks and thank Chair Navarro for her leadership here. We're here, Madam Chair, because of you. I mean, there's just no other way to describe it, and I think it's a really important conversation. Certainly, the conversation has taken longer than any of us would like. We all acknowledge that, but it's a tough conversation, and it's an ongoing conversation. I think getting to the point where we have regulations matters, and it matters because we're talking about institutional issues, and they require institutional solutions. And that's why I'm glad that you pushed, Madam Chair, for this to be in law, that we are here today to codify regulations and move it to the full council, because it can't be a fleeting commitment that is focused on for one moment and then moved on from the next. And so, I think that that's really important. I've said before, we have to be as intentional of dismantling these structures as those who put them in place were intentional in putting them there in the first place. If we don't meet that same level of intentionality, that same seriousness and fidelity of commitment, then we won't meet the charge and the responsibility. So I really appreciate that. Ms. Ward, I appreciate all of your work. I know this hasn't been easy. I think I noted when we were putting this in place that this isn't going to be a 7-month process. It really isn't going to be a 7-year process. And so good luck, because you have a lot of challenge ahead. I think you've probably seen that so far. I think you knew that going in, and you knew what you didn't know, and yet probably didn't know what you didn't know at the same time. Ms. Singleton, appreciate all of your work. I'm glad you've moved into this new role and are going to help us on our side of these issues move this forward. And I appreciate the comment earlier about, it's not necessarily about people, it's about structures. And that is what this conversation is about. But people make structures. And so it's really about both. And so I think it's important that this not be a conversation about blame, of who's responsible for getting us to this place. It's a reflection of what it is. What is the reality, and then how do we change the reality if we don't like it, if we don't want to accept it? And that requires structural change, but people make structures, and so it requires people to change. And so I think we got to talk about the conversation in both regards. And then I just wanted to quickly connect it, and Chair Navarro was noting this earlier. This isn't about one group or one subset of people or a community within our community. It's about everybody, and the lost opportunities that we are having together because of the inequities that exist. And we're about to have a conversation about tax revenue. And so I think they connect, because the whole purpose of this conversation is that nothing is immune to these issues. When we talk about health disparities, when we talk about economic inequalities, when we talk about access to services, food insecurity, you name it, we could continue and that list almost infinitely. But there was a city Global Perspectives and Solutions report, came out in fall of 2020. It posited that over the last 20 years, just looking at racial inequality and inequities, accounted for $16 trillion in lost GDP over 20 years in the United States of America. If we close that gap, which of course we're not going to do overnight, but if we did, hypothetically, it would represent a gain of $5 trillion over the next 5 years. Now that's nationally, of course, we don't talk in trillions here, but we do talk in billions at the county level alone. So I just wanted to bring it back to that. So as we talk about how we're going to solve these issues, how we're going to address these issues, how we're going to tackle them one by one, issue by issue, we need to have the structural conversation about it, but we also have to have the individualized, each decision is involved in changing it, and it has staggering consequences, and they're not negative, they're positive. How we got here might be negative, but what we can do if we change the outcomes that we don't like can be incredibly, overwhelmingly, almost unthinkably positive. And so I just wanted to bring it up, because we are literally talking about the revenue side of things in a moment, and if we can just chip away just a little bit each and every day at these issues, the amount of benefit that would mean, it's not just dollars and cents, but it obviously, when you put it in raw numbers, it I think highlights the point. It's about families, it's about quality of life, it's about reaching your full potential, it's about having the health care that you need to be happy, and it's about stress levels. It's everything. And so I just wanted to note that. I want to thank everybody for all of the work that went into this. Note again, your leadership, Chair Navarro. I'm really proud to have been on the council when this change has been made. A lot of work went into it prior to me being here, and I hope a lot of work is going to happen long after I am gone. And I just want to note, since I think I'll be back as long as I turn my ballot in, that I'm committed to continue the legacy that you have left on this. I know that we have staff that is committed to this, and certainly we have a lot of work to do, but this is a seminal moment that we're getting to by codifying these institutionalized regulations into county code. So thank you.
Well, thank you. See, that makes me feel really great that I know for a fact that we've got colleagues here, this particular committee, that are going to be committed to continue this important work. All right, so I think with that, again, Ms. Ward, thank you for taking the time. I know that I personally was hoping that we would get it quicker, but I understand that this is groundbreaking. And when something is groundbreaking, sometimes you have to take the time to get it right. And maybe there will be tweaks and things, but it's okay, because this is important, and it was worth the time. And Ms. Singleton, thank you so much for stepping into this role, because it will be equally important that both branches do this right and take the time to do it right and authentically be able to make it through. So with that, colleagues, I think that what I'm hearing is that we're good with the regulations.
You want a hand vote, so you have
Oh, sure. Let's do a hand vote. All those in favor of adopting the regulations, please raise your hand. All right. Now it's done. Yay. Thank you very much. So we're going to switch things around a little bit. We're going to do actually item number 3, because I understand that some folks have to leave early, and we took a little longer. Let me call Ms. Bryant, the Director of OMB, Office of Management and Budget. I believe that in my packet, I see here that we have Mr. Chris Mullen, Ms. Feldman, and Mr. Platt, Chief Economist of Finance. And this particular item is the resolution to approve the tax supported fiscal plan summary for the FY 23 to 28 Public Services Program, something that we do every year. And Mr. Smith, of course, has ably prepared the packet with some particular observations, et cetera. And I would just go ahead and turn it over to you to walk us through, and then we'll just engage in a conversation as needed. And your microphone doesn't work. And it's not me, because I don't have any buttons over here that are blinking or anything. You want to check the other? No?
There we go. All right, thank you. And on behalf of our colleagues from OMB, I also thank the committee for moving item number 3 up next so that they can return to their duties as well. So as the chair noted, this is a pro forma item that the committee reviews every year at this time following the approval of the operating budget in May. The county charter does require that the council adopt a 6-year public service program. And then the council's fiscal policies also require that the council adopts a balanced fiscal plan, which it has done for many years. As noted, and as we always note, the fiscal plan summary is a snapshot in time. So these are the current fiscal and economic conditions, as well as the budget decisions that were made recently. And as we all know, I mean, if anyone was watching the news yesterday or has been watching the news, the economic conditions are up for grabs right now. And so the council will see updates to this in December, but certainly we'll see updates with the revenue estimating group in September and December. But this plan will not be updated again until December, which is when the council usually sees revenue changes, and we will have a better understanding. We'll just quickly highlight, again, as we noted during the fiscal, for the operating budget, the revenues significantly were increased in fiscal 23 compared to the approved fiscal 22, but it returns much more to normal throughout the fiscal plan for fiscal 24 to 28, at least the average of about 2.8%. And as well as the agency resources. I mean, I think that's the biggest number, and segues with what we were just talking about for racial equity and social justice. The agency resources is where the council really puts in their resources to fund the agencies and fund the initiatives, the programs and services. And so we do see a significant increase in fiscal 23 based on the approved budget, but much more moderation in the future fiscal years. The last one I'll note real quick is all of the fiscal policies of the council have been approved in this fiscal plan at or above the policy level. One quick note, reserves are slightly greater than 10% in this for fiscal 23, and as noted in the staff report, that's due to some additional resources specifically for the early care and education NDA, which gets reappropriated later in the fiscal year. And so as much as it says 10.2%, there are some resources that will get reappropriated and moved into the appropriate place at that time during the fiscal year, and we'll see in the December update a better estimate at that time. So council staff does recommend approval of this. It will go to full council on June 21st as a consent item, and I welcome any questions, comments from the committee. Ms.
Bryant, anything you would like to add? There you go.
Jennifer Bryant, Director of Office of Management and Budget. I'd like to thank the committee for having us here today, and Councilmember Navarro. I know that you're winding down in some of your work here in the committee, and wish you the very best in the future. And I'd like to thank council staff for their work on finalizing this plan. We don't have any real additional comments other than we are anxious and watching the ongoing changes to the economic conditions in this country and in the county in specific. And we'll be taking up some of those conversations through our work in the revenue estimating group. I think the group is working very well, and we're looking forward to continuing that work in the upcoming fiscal year.
Thank you so much, Ms.
Thank
Bryant. Councilor Feetson.
Yeah, appreciate this. No issues with approving this. I do think we're heading into some serious choppy water and crosswinds, so to speak, up for grabs. That's the first I heard of that. I don't know if that made me laugh or made my stomach sink, but or a little bit of both. But I think we need to be really diligent here and hope that we can have that ongoing conversation. I'm glad we do have the revenue estimating group, because I think that group is going to really need to be part of navigating through what all of this means, both the fiscal policy decisions at the federal level and what impact that has on the economy, but just the basic economic conditions. We have yield curve dynamics, stock market dynamics. I mean, major consumer spending and consumer confidence issues. Issues related to inflation and going to the grocery store and what people are paying for and what they can even get. Much less at the pump. So. I just wanted to note, I hope that we can come back. I still think there is some work to do on the revenue estimating group to be as proactively collaborative as was intended when we passed that, when this committee really pushed that forward. I hope that the other members of the revenue estimating group don't become what the council was before, kind of receiving the final product after it was done. The whole purpose of that group was for this to be a collaborative effort to weigh the issues and to come up with what the answer is. And so I just wanted to note that here. Obviously, it's new. We're still working through it. This isn't a criticism, much less it's just a reflection of working through what the intention of that was and making sure we work through it. So I'd love to come back and talk about that, and how that is all going to work. I don't think we're ready to do that today, but I was hoping to flag it for the chair and for colleagues and for staff. But I think perhaps in the fall we can come back and talk through how we're going to do it. And I think, it's needed now more than ever, given all the dynamics that we've talked about today. And I am very excited, as challenging as this may come, that we now have a structure. As we talked about structural improvements, this is another structural improvement, and we have a structure now to deal with the uncertainty that we have. The council can't possibly, once a year in the budget process, be ready for all the changes that are coming in the economy. And so relying on this revenue estimating group, having it at the staff level, having it be as collaborative and proactive as possible to come up with, and weigh and go through that iterative process together and collaboratively, I think will be really, really beneficial to how we deal with these challenges and address them moving forward. So I'll yield back. Thanks.
Yeah, I think, first of all, as I'm winding down, I do have to, recognize and acknowledge former Councilmember Nancy Florine. We worked together to make sure that we would have this process of the fiscal plan and kind of reactivate that. And it is important because we have learned a lot of lessons. I mean, I joined the council, and it was immediately, I came with a lot of ideas about strengthening certain initiatives and interventions and creating others. And I was met with, furloughs, savings plans, restructuring of benefit cost share. I mean, all of it all at once because of it did give me a mean face for a long time, that's for sure. But then, and now the pandemic, right, which we were able to ride thanks to the federal relief funds. However, I think that this time can be a little different too, because the effects of the pandemic are not done yet in terms of what communities are, and residents are feeling. this issue of how everything is really expensive is so true. I mean, and it's everything. You know, I'm checking my receipts now, like, what? Car wash went up. Everything has gone up. Food has gone, everything has gone up. And so I think that there is a situation here that can be very, very troublesome for us. And to the extent, and I'm sure you guys are already doing that, to the extent that there are already conversations about, you know, possible scenarios, I think it's going to be important, given what we've learned in the past. and to your point, Councilmember Friedson, you know, good that we have now these structures in place so that we won't have to then be so reactionary. That would be, I think, really critical, because again, I do worry that, you know, it's very different from the last recession in the sense that we had not just gone through a pandemic that has, again, destabilized so many people, and with federal relief funds kind of waning, et cetera, and that is a very different variable this time around for us to be cautious. So, all right, with no other thoughts, questions, et cetera, I think that without objection, we will adopt this and then send it to full council. Thank you so much. Okay, so we will return to item number 2, and this is county income tax estimates. Again, this was something that, you know, I mean, it's also related to what we were just discussing, because this issue of estimates and, you know, revenue projections, and are we on point or not, it's also really, really important for us to have a much more accurate idea. And I think there were some interesting things that happened in terms of some of this, you know, the distributions and from the state comptroller's office, et cetera, that created something a little bit different. So we just wanted to just have an overview, just understand where we are with that and how we're tracking these things, and do we, you know, expect anything like that to happen again, or how is it being handled, and the impact and the implications for our county. So that's why we're here. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Mr. Smith, so that you can introduce our guests again, and then we can start the conversation.
Thank you, Ms. Navarro. Yes, the committee did request this during the budget, given some of the specifics of what happened for the revenue estimates and income taxes for fiscal 22 and fiscal 23. I'm joined by Ms. Feldman and Mr. Platt from Finance, who, well, as always, we work very collaborative with and have been very helpful in providing the background and the information for this. I'll just note, I mean, we could spend a lot of time on income tax estimates, and so this was set up because during the budget, more as a primer for this discussion, and certainly as Mr. Friedman just requested, we can have a much deeper dive on specific estimates or the revenue estimating group at a later time, but again, wanted to give a good primer to our county income taxes, because unlike some of our other taxes, as noted in the staff report, the state handles all of our income tax information. So the counties are able in the state of Maryland to have an income tax maybe between 1% to 3.2%. The state collects that information, collects that tax through the individual filers as they file their Maryland income taxes, and then they give distributions to the county. And so some quick background on terms that are used often, maybe very familiar for the committee, but for those watching at home, I mean, the state gives quarterly distributions for withholdings and estimated payments. Not sure why it's called quarterly. We get more than 4 because during the second quarter of the year, they give us additional ones, as well as in August, a reconciling one to make up for that, because of the end of the fiscal year for most counties is at the end of July, and so they try to meet that need. The second term is we have reconciling distributions, which is for kind of folks that make different payments than through withholdings or estimated payments. It's usually the largest one for us is in November when the state reconciles all of our payments for the previous tax year. And then finally, there's miscellaneous distributions, which includes interest, penalties, and other random, I wouldn't call them random, but other sorted payments that aren't linked to withholdings or estimated payments or the reconciling distributions. And so, as shown on Table 1, as provided by Finance and also on the Comptroller's website, those are the distribution schedules that the county gets for our fiscal year for income taxes. And all of that background is really important for 2 reasons. One, there are multiple tax years that the county receives in each fiscal year for their income taxes, about 3. I mean, and most of, or a good portion of our income taxes collected in, say, fiscal 22, which is the fiscal year right now, were for tax year 21. We're getting some collections for tax year 22 through the quarterly withholdings and estimated payments. But the reality is the county is getting income tax information as we receive our distributions based on economic conditions from last year, based on what tax filers were paying last year. And in some instances, it could even be two tax years ago. There is some tax payments that we received for tax year 2020 in fiscal 22. The second reality is that the comptroller does give us some information, but we do not get detailed tax filer information from the comptroller's office. And so finance does a lot of great work to use economic data and other data to put together our income tax estimates, but we do not have individual filer data to determine the best ways to estimate our income taxes. And so I think that's really important background information about how these estimates are put together. Finance does an excellent job to use that limited data of what we get from the state and as what we have in the economic conditions to estimate where we are. But the reality is that our best understanding of our current fiscal year of income taxes comes partway through the fiscal year, well beyond after the council has already approved a budget and approved the revenues for the year. And so, as Ms. Navarro noted, I mean, there were some also other situations for fiscal 22 and fiscal 23 that we wanted to get into today. So first of all, the fiscal 22 operating budget was approved last year in May of 2021. The revenues were approved in June of 2022. 2021, apologies. And somewhere through the fall, the finance began to see some significant increases to the quarterly distributions for income taxes. And so the fiscal 22 estimated income tax payments are significantly greater than what we estimated in June of 2021. And that's partly due, as you can see on table 2 on page 3, our quarterly distributions are up by almost $120 million for this current fiscal year. And that's from withholdings and estimated payments for residents in the county. We also did see a significant decrease, at least in November, for our reconciling distributions, almost $90.5 million less than was estimated. And those two factors caused us all to pause and try to figure out what was going on. And part of that is where to get into is that there was a special reconciliation distribution in March as the state of Maryland was realizing that there was some oddities there as well, and that's due to, as we'll get into in a moment, due to somehow the pass-through entity tax is working, coming out of the Tax Cuts and Job Act from the previous presidential administration. And so fiscal 22 estimates are significantly greater than what we had in the approved budget for fiscal 22 back almost a year ago. And that's just a reality of the reflection of kind of where the economic conditions were and how these payments came in. And then ultimately what is fiscal 23 shows us is continued growth based on the current year's economic conditions. As we noted previously, there is some rumblings in terms of where that economy is going to go, but the fiscal 23 estimates are based on current tax year 22, mostly of what's going to happen this tax year. And as noted on table 3 on page 5, the quarterly distributions for fiscal 23 compared to the approved fiscal 22 budget, not the estimated fiscal 22 budget, is $150.8 million more. And then the reconciling distributions are only going to be about $5.1 million less than what we were estimating. What's important is that Finance has included the special reconciliation distribution in March in their table. But as noted in the staff report, we do not expect that again in March. That is just a placeholder as they are making these estimates. They do expect those in both the withholdings and estimated payments and perhaps the reconciliation distributions in November and January. And then I'll briefly say a little bit about the special reconciliation distribution, and I'll turn it back over to the committee for questions and comments for us. As noted, the Tax Cut and Jobs Act changed a lot of federal tax information or tax requirements and tax brackets, as well as how pass-through entities works. Most importantly, it limited the state and local tax deduction to $10,000, and that shifted a lot of individual taxpayers' behavior, especially for pass-through corporations, where the income received for these pass-through corporations is then passed on to the individual and filed through their individual tax returns. Both the state and many states in the country have shifted also how pass-through entities file their taxes, as well in the state of Maryland. And so I think what we're seeing is ultimately a lot of that individual taxpayer information or behavior catching up in both in the state and the county, and given some of the lag for the county's distributions, we're seeing that now in fiscal 22. And I believe, as I've talked with Finance and as we've talked with the state, we're getting a better handle of that, and we should not see another one of those again. That should again be in the normal distributions. But that is not, as noted by finance during the budget, and I will note again, not a one-time bump. It is a rebasing, I guess you could say, based on the individual taxpayer behavior and how those estimates are working out. And so with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Ms. Navarro, for any questions, comments, and again, always appreciative of the work and collaborative work with our partners in finance.
Great. Yeah, I also want to, thank you for all your work and how, in managing through this particular issue very quickly, because it's been really important. Colleagues, any questions, any comments? Councilmember Friedson.
Yeah, well, thank you. First of all, thanks for doing this. Thanks to the chair. Thanks to Mr. Smith, and thanks to executive staff. I'm glad we're doing this. I think it's important for us to kind of have a better handle and understanding and put down on paper so it's understandable to the public insofar as folks who read this fully understand what is exactly happening, because there's a lot of moving parts here. But it reminds me of in Batman Begins, Morgan Freeman's character explains to him about separating the different atomic parts of the particles and all of this, and Christian Bale, playing Batman, says, "Am I supposed to understand what that means?" And he said, "No, I just wanted you to know how hard it was, how complicated it is, so you understand how much work it was." So some of this, I think, reflects how difficult this is for finance, how difficult this is for our team to figure out, all the different puts and takes in the budget, particularly when it comes to income tax. So I want to acknowledge that and thank you for that, and understand that it's easy for us to say, hey, why didn't this turn out exactly how we thought it was going to? But it's a lot harder to actually, put the puzzle piece together, and particularly as things change so quickly. So obviously there's a lot of good news here, right? We have more money than we expected, and we have a budget that very much reflected that. I'm not sure how sustainable it can be for us to continue that, but fortunately we're in a good position and we took full advantage of it. There's no doubt about that. I've been dealing, and having conversations with CAO Madalino and with the State Comptroller's Office, dealing with this issue specifically with pass-through entities, which has been a moving target, and we're all adjusting because that has changed behavior of taxpayers, which I don't think any of us really fully understood. We were reacting to what I think was bad policy at the federal level, frankly, but trying to adjust it to protect taxpayers. But obviously that has created a change in behavior, which we're now adjusting to. But the end result of that is good. That's ongoing expected revenue. We expect people to do well. The challenge is we're heading into a lot of crosswinds, as we had talked to before. And so I think some of our expectations are challenged here, number one. Number two, and you heard, I think, Chair Navarro note this very, very well, what people are feeling at the supermarket and what they're feeling at the gas pump and what they're feeling everywhere else eventually is going to hit us. And it's going to hit us in their spending behavior and what that means for, our revenues, people hiring people selling stuff, et cetera. They're the behaviors they have that have an impact directly on us. Obviously, we don't collect sales tax here, but, there are a number of other behaviors. But it's also going to impact us because of costs. And so, what I'm a little concerned about is we're assuming up to this point that basically our costs are going to remain the same. We have not baked into the budget, if our revenues, as we have discussed them, and we had a conversation just a few minutes ago, stay at what they are. If nothing changed, if we grew the county government by 0 positions, we increased salaries by $0, we paid for no new programs, how much do we expect our costs to go up, and how are we planning for that? So I'm not sure we're ready for that. It's a super complicated prediction, but I'm just wondering, are we thinking about that? Are we talking about that? Do we have initial conversations on what that might look like? Because I think we need to bake in like an inflationary adjustment here, because a little bit of me is concerned that we have based the budget and the budget decisions that we've made up to this point on how things were, not on how things are and are going to be as we move forward in terms of just the basic costs of buying things that the government has to buy. So I'm just curious if that's something that has been discussed internally and if you have any thoughts there.
Councilmember Friedson, Nancy Feldman, Fiscal Management. The key factor that comes from the revenue forecast that is built into the overall budget that would impact expenditures is the inflation forecast, right? As you are aware, the forecast that the budget was based on was developed at the end of February, early March, and presented in the recommended budget. Very different time, perhaps, from today in terms of inflation expectations. And I think as Mr. Smith mentioned, we are focusing for the revenue estimating group to be looking at the economic forecast and conditions so that as we move towards the September 15th revenue estimating group report, we will have an update on the economic conditions that we will present and discuss as part of that discussion. How that translates into the budget, I believe Ms. Bryant has left the room. And so, I would have to suggest that we defer that conversation when she is in the room and the leaders on the budget side. But from a revenue estimating perspective, inflation is the key input into some of the costs that are
And you understand
included.
the point that I'm making is that's important, but we're thinking about inflation in terms of what impact it will have on tax revenues. And I think we also have to think about it because the purpose of estimating revenues is to determine the funding available for the budget. And so I think we have to, hoping that the revenue estimating group could be part of that discussion. The whole benefit to that group is that it has budget, it has finance, it has council staff and OLO all working together, if it's working as it should, where we can have those left hand talking to the right hand type of conversations so we're not doing this in a silo. And so I wanted to note that too. I think it's really important. We've talked about inflation quite a bit over the last 6 months, which is good. But we've talked about it really only in two contexts. Number one, the context that we just talked about, how it's going to impact our revenue estimates, which is important. Number two, in terms of construction of capital projects, which is also important. It's going to increase the cost of capital in the capital budget. We need to be able to be ready for that. But the third piece is how's it going to impact the operating budget just in the basic cost that we have. I mean, if families are paying more at the grocery store, if families are paying more at the pump, the county government's going to pay more, when we have to make our purchases, and we're a fairly large purchaser of items and goods as we provide services. So I just wanted to note that. I hope that that's included because the one concern that I have consistently had, and I will raise again, I think has been shared by colleagues on this committee in particular, is we can't just take the positive news. We have to take the negative news that comes with it. And so the revenues here are really positive, and we're seeing more here. But some of the reason why people are going to get paid more and we're going to see more income taxes is because stuff costs more. And businesses are understanding that, and employees are understanding that, and so they're getting more money. And that means we're going to get some more money. But if they're only getting enough money to cover the costs that have increased, then we shouldn't be increasing the spending that we're doing because we have to reflect that our costs are going up similarly to theirs. And so I'm hoping that we can, have that sober conversation. We're not going to have it today. I think, the revenue estimating group really needs to be focused in on that at the staff level and then come to us and talk about how are we thinking through in a holistic way how all of these different issues work together. But with that, I really appreciate this. I think this is really helpful. I acknowledge how complicated it is, and I think we're moving in the right direction, but we're going to have to continue to be mindful and really sober about the decisions that we make because, I think that it looks rosy at the moment, but, the forecast has a lot of storms ahead, and we have to be ready to prepare for those storms. So thank you.
Councilmember Katz.
Thank you very much, and Madam Chair, and I thank you and Councilmember Friedson have certainly made all the pertinent points. I did want to publicly thank Mr. Smith and Ms. Feldman, Mr. Platt, for all of your hard work. I did enjoy the Batman quote. I thought that was very good. I now have to go back and look at the rest of the movie. But, you know, I think the only thing we can guarantee is what we thought is not what we're going to end up with. I mean, that's bottom line. And forecasting is something that I don't know that anybody can say that they've always done it perfectly, nor could, if they did say it, I could forecast they're not going to be correct. I mean, that's the one thing that we have. But I do think that we have to be extremely careful, to your point about things are costing more and therefore how we're going to be spending our money. But there is the possibility, because things are costing more, Madam Chair mentioned that car washes, well, what happens if somebody decides rather than do 2 or 3 car washes a month, they cut down to 1 car wash a month, and therefore the person that works at the car wash facility, you know, is not going to have that job or not going to have as many hours in that job. So we have to be very careful of that, and I do think that as fortunate as we are, I've always been someone that believes you're always much better off to be conservative in your forecasting, because if you take in more money, you know, you've had a good day. If you take in that same amount of money but you forecasted more, you've had a horrible day. So anyhow, I think we're doing it the right way. We're being careful, and we need to continue that. Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, you know, I was just remembering how, especially when I began to chair this committee and I had to go, Mr. Platt, you're always part of that team, go to New York to defend our AAA bond rating. And I would always observe very carefully the way that the presentation, you know, was delivered, and how everybody had a dot that connected to the next presenter, because it's all, right? It's all one comprehensive picture. But the one thing that always stood out for me was that County Executive Leggett would always start with the bad news, right? And then he would pivot to the opportunities, and then how are we going to address that sort of bad news? And it was important, because it wasn't about coming in, to your point, Councilmember Friedson, and saying, oh, wow, this is awesome. It was about, you know, first, hey, these are some of the challenges that we are beginning to monitor. And although this, you know, the revenues have been, you know, pretty awesome, if you will, we are tracking this other piece, and we have to, you know, and I'm going to be honest, that might have, you know, an incredible impact, but these are the things that we may have to contemplate. And I say that because I think it's going to be relevant as you know, that process happens again in the fall, because there are many particular characteristics here, given the one-time relief funds, and then this particular, you know, piece around this distribution, et cetera, that might make everything kind of feel okay. And it is election season, and everybody's trying to act as if everything is okay, but we have to be guarded. And I think especially as we go, you know, as that conversation happens again with the rating agencies, in terms of how are we being already proactive in the event that, you know, things become even worse in terms of the economy at this point. So I wanted to say that because as I said, Mr. Platt, you've always been, you know, a part of that team, and may I say that it's always been such a stellar team. I mean, I learned a lot, but I was always in awe of how everybody just, again, the narrative was very tight in terms of, you know, what finance had to say really fed into what OMB was saying. Our economic development strategy was always discussed, and, you know, and it was just part of that particular narrative, which is why we've been able to retain our AAA bond rating, because we not only recognize the challenges, but we have always come armed with a plan to address those challenges. Anything you'd like to add, Mr. Platt?
Madam Chair, thank you for those comments. Again, we do have a great team that goes to the bond rating agencies. We do have a good presentation across the board, not only the legislative group, the county exec, everyone has a great, I would say we have a great story to tell. And we don't sugarcoat it, excuse that term. We lay the facts out We say, this is what we expect, and I think that's why we have the ratings that we have, is because we're very forthright coming and saying, this is, like you mentioned about Mr. Leggett, he would start off by saying, these are the challenges, this is it, and then build off that in a positive way. This is what we're doing and what we see overcoming those challenges. That was the word he always used, and I liked his word, challenges. And I think that was perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, no, for sure. And you know what? It's in some of those particular presentations, there were challenges that we addressed that were not politically expedient, but they were done. And it really, made a difference. And I feel like, oftentimes when I'm asked about, serving on the council, et cetera, one of the things I also observe is that, serving in political office is interesting because people have real short memories. We all have real short memories. And it's almost like it's, you can solve like extraordinary, long-standing worldwide crises one day, and the next day it's kind of like, well, what are you going to do now? What are you going to do next? It's never about, but the truth is that it's important to reflect on, those types of interventions that had to be made because we can learn from them. And understand that it's okay, even that, for some folks that might feel queasy because it's not politically expedient, you have to do it. Regardless of whether you may be reelected or not, because this is what will, take the county in the right direction, and it has been done. And so I think as we hopefully don't have to go down that path again, but if we ever do, it is important to, point to what had to be done in the past, in the recent past, to get us to the right place. Any other comments? Okay, so we will follow up with Councilmember Feetsen's request. And I really do appreciate this conversation. I think it's very productive to have these check-ins outside of the budget madness. All right, with that, we are